Andy, I failed as a host last on Tuesday. You had a very cool Arnold Schwarzenegger shirt on, and I failed to. Andy. I'll just say it. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I was excited about it's a new shirt. I ordered it. There's a series of new shirts released, and it's a fun one where it's a picture of Arnold in his new book's title. Be useful, and then he's wearing the shirt in the shirt, so it's kind of goofy looking. It was, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. But today, hey, that was a good shirt. But today we're celebrating a day again. Tomorrow being Veterans Day, as folks are listening to this, the NFL does a great job celebrating veterans. So today I'm in my NFL Detroit Lions green and blue, and happy to be here again, once again this week with my fellow veteran as we do Men of a Certain X. So happy pre-Veterans Day to you.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. It is pre-Veterans Day, and it will be released, on a Friday here, the day before Veterans but observed by many people on Friday. So, yeah, great salute to the veterans. Anybody who gives their service to the country, I mean, deserves this day. You go through a lot. There's a lot of challenges and struggles to serve. It's not just simply put on the uniform. There's a lot of things that go along with it, and also to the families who are their support network and who are there with the long hours, and sometimes the family member is gone for extended periods and they are working through that. So service, sacrifice, all of that to you as well. So definitely want to recognize that.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, Andy, I did want to just note on the Arnold front, because you did get recognized by Arnold again. This is becoming quite a commonplace. I'll let you tell it more in a minute, but I did see a funny clip of Arnold back from Predator, which
Oh
is
yeah.
we love Pumping Iron, the movie, the documentary, the mockumentary. Maybe it's a mockumentary. I don't know but it's a documentary, Pumping Iron. If you haven't seen it, you need to watch it. But Arnold was renowned for being a trash talker, and what he did to his opponents was just classic.
Yeah.
Well, there's a clip going around of Arnold and Jesse the Body Ventura, about how Jesse the Body thought that he had a bigger arms than Arnold did, and so Arnold did some psychological warfare on Jesse and ultimately wound up the victor. And just to hear Arnold retell the story, it's just classic. This guy is a master
Yeah.
at psyching people out, and to his benefit. So I enjoyed that clip very much. So
Yeah, I enjoy. So what you were referencing in the beginning there, it was a rethread. I made a comment to one of Arnold's posts on Threads, which was kindly rethreaded. So that's always fun. You and I've had that experience on Twitter, now X, and now on Threads. It's kind of fun and entertaining always to have those kinds of exchanges. So that was cool. But that clip you're describing, I mean, Jesse the Body is a fun guy, right? I mean, just such a
yeah,
wild character, fun wrestler, such a dynamic presence about him. Went on to become an independent governor of the state of Minnesota, and has continued a career of advocacy on different issues and entertainment, and just fun to see him. And he made it successfully in Hollywood too. So it was fun to see that guy perform. Those two are great together in Predator. So yeah, and Arnold definitely. I mean, if you see Pumping Iron, you see Arnold at his best there, messing with Lou Ferrigno and others, during that show. It's a
yeah,
good one. So yeah, we'll share the link for that. So we hasn't seen it. Great to check that out for sure.
yeah. You definitely have to look at that. Okay, Andy, let's shift our topics. We got a couple things we want to get to today. First off, did you catch any of the Republican debate last night? Again, that would have been on a Wednesday night. We're recording on Thursday. This will be published Thursday night into Friday. Did you catch any of the Republican debate, and did you care?
So I don't watch debates generally
Yeah.
speaking. I'll watch a presidential debate or a gubernatorial debate, but like these preliminary debates. I mean, they're not particularly interesting to me. They're mostly, shows of trying to garner support, and they don't have my support, so I don't need to waste my time watching it. I read the recaps though, and looking at last night's debate. I mean, the Republican debates are just it's like choosing a JV team captain, right? I mean, for that kid, it's a big deal, but nobody else really cares who the JV team captain is, right? And Donald Trump is so far away in the polls, in the Republican field. Even if he's convicted and en route to a jail cell, he's going to be the Republican nominee in 2024. Like, that's almost a certainty. He's so far ahead. So Washington based kind of like what are these folks playing for? But it's fun to watch. And there certainly seemed to have been some pretty exciting moments there. I mean, I was watching the some of the comments and some of the clips that were played, and there were some interesting exchanges there with the front runner Nikki Haley, who, you know, amongst that pool of five, which I'll come back to in a moment, she's performing very well. I mean, she's
Yeah.
a very strong candidate right now, and interesting to see some of the exchanges she had with some of her opponents were not she is not holding back. So interesting. Any thoughts on your end?
Well, I was the JV captain, Andy, when I was in high school.
And
So I
and people are proud of you. You should be proud
so
of that.
I will appreciate that. But to your point on Nikki Haley, yeah, I have come away. Look, I'm not this candidate pool is a joke. I think everything you've said has been spot on with the Trump, but barring any drastic changes, I know he's going through a lot of criminal course cases right now, so who knows what's going to happen. But Nikki Haley really has performed,
Yeah.
and it's a shame because I feel like if she was the legitimate front runner, if this was for more than second place, I think she would be a very viable candidate. I think she would. She's been a governor. She's been a successful governor, which compared to senators and representatives, you actually have to lead. And so she's done very well on that front. She's held up very well against all the attacks, and she's done well. She's separated herself from Trump very respectfully. And I think she's done pretty well from all accounts. So it will be interesting to see. So I've been impressed with her.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll say this. I mean, one, her exchange with her exchange with Vivek Ramaswamy, where he starts bringing up her daughter in regards to TikTok, and she tells him you're scum. That's gonna stick, right? That is
Yeah.
gonna stick, and it's gonna hurt him, and it's gonna bolster her. It's gonna show she's strong, protecting her family. That's gonna resonate with people. And you know, at the end of the day, a lot of times these debates are setting up for the future. And Ms. Haley is 51 years old. She's not going anywhere. She's clearly dominating, you know, the debates right now, 3-0 in these debates. It's fun to read the headlines. You know, I always like to go to the Hill. I think the Hill does a good job recapping things, and a lot of folks don't care for the New York Post. I enjoy the New York Post, and you know, they lead things off pretty strongly for her. You know, with the real scum dinger as the headline, as they talk about her references. So I mean, she's getting a lot of strong attention. And I mean, in reality, you know, 4 years from now, I mean, one, I'll make this statement now. You can hold me to it, Dave. Donald Trump will not win the 2024 election, right? He will not win the election. He will win the GOP nomination, but at the end of the day, most Americans do not want him to be president. He will not be elected. That's my statement. I'm throwing down my chips on that.
Well,
So go
oh,
ahead.
sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Amy, but I mean well, maybe I did, but I mean, I think Tuesday night, the weird election cycle that we went through kind of reinforced what we saw in the midterms, frankly, is this idea that everybody's dissatisfied with Biden and the Democrats. I think that may still be true. Both that can be true,
Yeah.
but I think this whole MAGA, this whole Trump, influence, like people don't want that either. I think that's pretty clear. Kentucky, the governor to Kentucky lost the state Senate. I think it was the Senate in Virginia, state Democratic. A lot of other, there weren't a ton of races, but the ones that did race said very clearly, we don't want this next cycle. So I would tend to support what you're saying there, Dan.
Yeah, I'd like to come back to that, those state races, in a moment, since being in Virginia. But on that point, I think there's just a cap. I think there's a cap on MAGA Nation, right? It's a very strong, energetic part of the population, but I think it's a limited part of the population. And so, again, back to Haley, she's putting herself in position to be the clear front runner in 2028. Now, my governor, Glenn Youngkin, would like to be that guy too. Took a hit 2 nights ago here in Virginia. But Nikki Haley's positioning herself to be, to go in strong, acceptable to the population, and position herself to be a real strong front runner at 55 years old. That's a great place to be for her. So I think she's doing a really good job, because she's not going to be Trump's vice president. That's for sure. So
yeah,
you're going to see, and there's a lot into the debate. I probably not worth a lot of time. Can I move to the states, Dave? I'd like to talk a little about that. If that's
let's talk about that, and then we also want to get to some new polling out as well too, Andy.
Yeah.
So let's go to the states, Andy.
So I mean, just on the states thing, it was an interesting night. What always entertains me about politicians, right? I mean, there's so much to be entertained with by these folks, but they always perceive mandates that aren't, right. I mean, the last election mandate that I really think was a mandate was Ronald Reagan in 1984, right, where he won every state in the union except for Walter Mondale's home state of Minnesota. You win 49 out of 50 states, you've got a mandate, right? Since then, we've had extremely close elections in a lot of states. Now, some states not so much, right? But in a lot of states and at the national level. And so, what it brings back to is in Virginia, right? So we're 1 year off in our elections in Virginia. So our last election for governor was 4 years ago, and Governor Youngkin won. And he was sort of an unknown that got the GOP nomination and did well. He came across likable, his little sporty red vest, non-threatening, spoke well, was engaging, but was still losing in the polls until his opponent, Democrat Terry McAuliffe, former governor of Virginia, just could not get his shoe out of his mouth on issues that were very important at the time with parents, on parents' influence in schools, and he killed himself. I mean, he really just killed his election. And Youngkin largely won because McAuliffe stumbled horribly, and Republicans took that as a big win and Youngkin's victory. And Youngkin's been gaining steam, the last few years. People talking about him as coming in to be a savior for the GOP if Trump stumbles and things of that nature. He never had that strong mandate in Virginia, a very split state. And in our elections here, Democrats won both the House of Delegates and the Senate in their repudiation of that idea. But the Democrats also don't have a mandate, right? This wasn't Virginia saying we're all in on the blue, party. It was, I don't think, we want to support Governor Youngkin and the Republicans by much, because it was still a very close split. If you look at what happened there, I think I had the numbers up here earlier. The Senate went 21-19 to Democrats, the House of Delegates 51-48. Not a mandate at all, but a win. And so I think, for Republicans, there is a message in that as you're talking to. I think also interestingly, in Ohio, the liberal policies won, abortion getting codified in the Constitution. That was a big loss to the pro-life movement there. And marijuana legalization won handedly in Ohio, which was interesting to see. Ohioans voted on marijuana, and it won by 57-43, which is a pretty strong victory on that issue. So interesting to see, interesting results. Not really a good night for Republicans, a pretty good night for Democrats. A split nation, no one's got a mandate, and that's going to be the case going through the 2024 election as well. So I just think it was interesting. It's always fun to watch these things, and I think our country's an interesting place.
Well, I think when there's certain key issues, and I think if you're going to tie yourself to those key issues, you're going to see that there's an extremism element of those that dominates the discussion. Like when we talk about parents' rights in schools and stuff, and again, there's videos circulating about the latest moms for drama. We're talking about realm of ridiculousness, and then you have abortion, which continues to be a very hot button topic. So I think it will be definitely interesting to see. Andy, I did want to talk about a recent poll that came out this week. Yeah. We talked earlier in the week about RFK and what kind of effect he could have, or even third-party candidates in general could have. New poll came out, says that with the younger crowd, he's actually leading in a lot of areas. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, according to this recent poll done by the New York Times and Siena College, 34% of registered voters between 18 and 19 support Robert F. Kennedy, with Trump at 29% and Biden at 30%. And the numbers aren't bad at the next age group. Between 30 to 44, Kennedy gets 31% and Biden and Trump at 30%. And that really tells me that, again, as we've been saying on this podcast for quite a while, people want something different. People are not attracted to Republican Trump, Democrat Biden, the individuals, and largely their parties. And so people are yearning for something else. I think our younger generations are really looking for something else and other options. And again, we brought up Robert F. Kennedy a few times, and I always feel like I have to qualify this with that. I'm not a supporter. I like the idea of many choices. And I think our future is one where young people today increasingly want more choices. I think we're going to see ranked choice voting come into place at some point. I think we're going to see multiple candidates on the ballot. I think the duopoly, the red versus blue, A versus B dynamics of our elections, I think has a limited lifespan, to be honest. And I think that's super exciting, but very interesting to see the numbers specifically for Kennedy, because it could play out interestingly in the next few years. I mean, he's got a lot of time He's already got the name recognition. He's already got the fundraising, and with two non very well liked candidates in the major parties, that creates an interesting opportunity, and it could be the greatest third party challenge we've seen since Ross Perot potentially. Which again, I prefer having three candidates I don't care for over two candidates I don't care for. So it looks very interesting.
Yeah, I think you hit on something interesting there, and maybe we can wrap up on this, but before we go to our follow up topic. But I think the I that these parties, the Democrats, along about the policies, the barriers to entry. It's so funny they talk about barriers for entry for like voting, but yet the barriers for entry to even be another party are so high that it really just benefits most people give up as opposed to do that. But I do think with the younger generation, they are going to be sick and tired of this. They're already sick and tired of a lot of that. You see that on so many different levels. So I think it's going to be an interesting element there, Andy. So I know I think I might be getting a little technical difficulties here. So hopefully this won't be lasting too long. But Andy, I want to tee up though, talking about that and talking about a little bit of our conversation from earlier this week when we were talking about the Generation Z. And we were talking about how hard it is for them to make ends meet and how hard it is for them to get things together. I pulled up some figures, Andy.
All right.
And I just want to give some comparison just in a 20-year span. I'm not going to go back to when a lot of things, but 20 years ago, Andy, we started our professional careers or we're relatively within that window of starting our professional careers. So I picked that timeline, but let's just give some examples. In 2001, the average house price was 174,000. And that's when I bought my first house, and I think it was 161,000. So that's about right? I mean, I think that's the average house price, um, which actually was lower. But according to the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis, the median home price today is 431,000.
Yeah.
That's great for existing homeowners, but bad for those who are trying to get into the market. And when you consider a 7 to 8% rate for an interest rate, that's the difference there between 7%. I'm going to go on the low end here because some people can probably get 7%. Versus 3%, which is where it was just the 24 months ago. That's a difference of $1,000 a month just on the house and taxes. I mean, the house and taxes for a 30-year loan. I mean, that's not including your insurance. That's not including your property taxes. So that's $1,000 just there. So you're paying upwards of $2,800 for that type of mortgage just on 430,000. And so that's one factor. Now let's look at annual income in 2021. I'm sorry, in 2001, that was 42,000, and now it's 60,000. That's an increase of 30%. Meanwhile, those housing prices that we just talked about increased over 200%.
Yeah.
So you've got those challenges there. And again, look, I'm sure somebody could sit there and say, are you using this versus that? Look, we can argue over the numbers and we can argue the source of the data. The problem, the issue, or I guess the problem doesn't change.
Yeah.
I mean, significance in the price of your income versus the price of everything else, the cost of living has gone up exponentially more versus the cost of paying it. Now, people can come in and chime in and say, well, bonuses are through the roof for the senior executives. Yeah, that's true. I mean, all of that is also true. So, and then I want to call in one other factor here about student loan debt. Again, in 2001, 2002, the average cost, again, I'm just using averages, for a four-year public institution was $3,700 and $16,000 for a private four-year private institution. Now that's almost $9,500 for a four-year. And this is 2019, 2020. It's $9,300 for a four-year public school and $32,000 for a private school. And that's not including housing. That's just tuition, and that's not including your food and all this other stuff. So I mean, and look, I know both of our boys attend Virginia Tech. You're an in-state tuition. I'm an out-of-state. I can tell you what I pay there, and what I paid at the University of South Carolina. I mean, and it was much higher than 32,000. So, and that's the private school area. So, I mean, that's a lot for a generation, and then you're going to call them out and that they're complaining about some of these conditions. I mean, that's a lot on there, Andy. So
It is. I mean, and David, car prices have gone up just in
yep.
recent years, at a very high rate. And, the cost of eggs, right, has gone up a lot over the last few years, right? So for young people today, it is fairly challenging to go out and get started in this world, right? It takes more than, I think, the math doesn't fully add up, So yeah, it can be frustrating. People trying to get their side hustles in, right? So you got some young kid trying to work a new job, trying to get adjusted to a new environment. They're, running for Uber at night or for DoorDash at night. And they're trying to go out and enjoy themselves a little bit and experience their 20s. Not easy, not easy. It's not easy. And I think, there's important things to look at there. And, I don't know that we're going to, there's not going to be massive changes in the cost of things immediately, but to have a little bit of empathy and compassion for these youngsters as they get started. I think that's very fair and reasonable. I mean, there's reason to be frustrated with things when you can't afford the basics of life that we're used to, so it's challenging. I mean, I think we were saying last time around, I think the young Gen Zers that are entering the workforce now, and it will be over the next, decade. I think that there's a lot of challenges in front of them, and I think they're doing a very good job showing the resilience they have through challenging times. Financially, it's a challenging time for a lot of people. The adversity of international conflict, geopolitical tensions all around, tensions here in the U.S., like you said last time, COVID, there's a lot of adversity, and all those numbers don't make it any easier.
Yeah, and I think here's the thing on it too, Andy, is they're all voters, right? I mean, and these are all people
Right.
who are, feeling the pain of the current system.
Yeah.
And look, you can rail on them if you want because they're young, but ultimately they're growing and they're going to say, I don't like the way this was. I don't like the way that, I think honestly, we have to really, and you start hearing some of these questions now, is that 4-year degree
Yeah.
even worth it? If I'm going to be straddled with $400,000 worth of debt, and yes, I mean the actual value is one thing, but then the loan over time is can accumulate quite significantly. If I'm going to be paying student loan debt for the rest of my life, maybe it's not what did it get me? Maybe it's not a whole lot. Maybe I need to be doing other things. So that you could see it on the education front. You
Yeah.
could see it on the choices in political candidates. I think there's a lot of things, and you can rail against this group if you want to, but they're going to be active, they're going to be engaged, and they're going to make policy changes. And I think that's for the good,
Yeah,
frankly.
no, I agree. I think we're starting to see that, right? I think their
Yeah.
curiosity about other options in life besides what they've been handed, I think again, politically is a good place to see that, right? They're yearning for other options. The choices they have don't feel right. They don't feel relevant. Like you see, I knock baby boomers all the time, right? Because it's easy and they're obnoxious, right? You see Trump and Biden out there. If you're 20 years old, you don't feel connected to those candidates. It's just very hard to feel connected to those candidates. And I think that's the case. I mean, and I don't know if that's going to change all of a sudden, when it's a Gen Xer, leading these major political parties. I think they're yearning for something else in many ways, politically, socioeconomically. Like there's a lot of things that they're sort of exploring. And again, I'm glad they are at a time when technology is rapidly evolving and increasing. There's all sorts of new ways for young people to get involved in things. It goes to education, right? You don't necessarily need that 4-year degree. There's a lot to be said in trade skills. There's a lot to be said in other skills and evolving fields and technologies that may not require that 4-year degree. College is great. College is great. I'm a big fan. I'm glad my boys are going, but it's not the only way. And so I think there's a lot of things that Gen Z is questioning and revisiting that I think are good and healthy and necessary. And rather than mock them and tease them, we should probably be listening a little bit and say, okay, what are they hearing and thinking and feeling that maybe we need to take into account? And if you're a politician running, you probably want to know what your future young voters are interested in and about. But for all of us, like, let's not just get stuck in where we are. And again, let's not be Dana Carvey on Saturday Night Live, right? The grumpy old man. let's look and try and learn like what's going on, what's changing. It's a very fast changing world. I think Gen Z's on the tip of that spear. There's a lot to offer and learn from this young generation.
Yeah, for sure. So, Andy, let's put a bow onto that and actually wrap up the week here. Andy is again a saluting out to all the veterans, their families, and loved ones for Veterans Day. But Andy, anything you want to wrap up with? How just a quick check in as we close out here. How are you feeling about the Lions this week? Good.
Feeling good. I think we're in for a good game. I think the Chargers are not as bad as they like to make themselves look at times. And Detroit has a chance to really get a good win here. The Chargers coming across the country after a Monday night game. The Lions having a bye week. The better team is Detroit, but you can lose to a team that's not as good as you. And I think I was going to say in San Diego, in Los Angeles to play the Chargers. I think it could go either way. I think the Lions will get the win, but I think it's a game. It's a game of the week. Excited to have Tony Romo call the game 4 o'clock, along with the NFC East games on Sunday afternoon. So I'm looking forward to enjoying a good few hours of football on Sunday afternoon for sure.
Yeah, the Cowboys play Tommy DeVito. It's not going to be a fun one for the Giants, I'm afraid. Penn State plays Michigan. I think that's going to be a tough one. I frankly don't expect a win there. But who knows how that goes. Penn State can show up for these big games, or they can play close for a little while and then peter out at the end. In order for them to really be elite or considered to be elite and not just, one of those top 10, 12 teams, they really need to win one of these games. And I'll be interested to see. So,
Yeah.
Andy, let's close it out for the week then. Appreciate you and all your service. And for everyone else, we'll catch up with you next time.